Hello everyone, and welcome back to Network 13. This is part 2 of our Western Electric Model 500 desk phone restoration project. And I haven't been able to work on this in a while. So I believe the part 1 video came out in maybe it was the middle of June of this year, 2019. I don't remember now. But it's the beginning of August now, so it's been quite a while since I've been able to pick this up and work on it. But in the interim, I did have a few things that I was able to do. And the first thing I did was I worked on the plastic shell. So I started to buff this out with some finer and finer grits of sandpaper. So I wet sanded the shell. I first used a 400 grit paper, then an 800 grit, then a 1000 grit. And then finally I did a pass with a 3000 grit paper, and I was able to remove pretty much all of the scratches that were on. If you recall from the first video, there was some really bad scratches like along this edge, and there were some bad scratches on this side here, and there were bad scratches on the front, and I was really able to just get rid of a lot of those, just sand them out and buff them out, which is great. There are a couple of little spots here that I couldn't get rid of. I sanded and sanded and sanded, but these are fairly deep into the plastic. And I think that if I keep sanding at this, I'm going to end up with another problem, whereas that I may end up with like a divot here or some kind of an unusual looking spot where I over sanded it. So I don't want to do that, so I'll just live with these two spots here. Now, the other thing I want to show you is I was very, very careful to avoid sanding these raised letters. This says Bell System by Western Electric. I really didn't want to ruin this, so I was very careful to just go around this and not hit it at all with the sandpaper. So this part here will remain unrestored, but that's fine. So that's the shell. And the other thing I had to tell you about was the handset. Now, the original handset on this phone was a Model G1 Western Electric. And the Model G1 handset was made of Bakelite. Now, Bakelite, please forgive me because I'm not a chemist, I'm just reading what I found online. Bakelite was the first really viable plastic that was used in consumer goods and in industry in the first half of the 20th century. Bakelite is made of phenol and formaldehyde, to which a catalyst is added. And the catalyst can be hydrochloric acid, zinc chloride, or ammonia. And also to this mixture, there's a filler material added. And the filler material can be wood flour or sawdust or even asbestos in some cases. So there are various stages where this is heated and chemicals are added and different production steps. But what you end up with is a resin. If you pump the resin into a mold under pressure and under the correct add the correct amount of heat, you let it cool and you let it cure, and then you end up with a knob for a radio, let's say, or you end up with a case for a radio, or you end up with a handset for a phone, or maybe part of a light switch or an insulator, 1,000 other things, because Bakelite was very extensively used in the first half of the 20th century for a lot of things. And of course, properties of Bakelite is a very good insulator. It's a very kind of dense material. You can mold it into a lot of different shapes. So that was the main benefit of Bakelite. Now, there were some drawbacks to Bakelite. It can sometimes be broken easily, chipped or broken, or it may shatter. Also, and this is the case with our G1 handset, if it's exposed to humidity or dampness for any long period of time, and if you recall from the first video, when I showed you this phone, originally, it was covered with some kind of a moss or a mildew. Obviously, this had been in a very damp environment for a very long time because the stuff was growing on everything. It was growing all over the shell and all over the dial plate here. It was everywhere. So obviously, humidity was a factor. But if bakelite is exposed to humidity or dampness for any long period of time, it can be ruined. Now, not physically ruined. The other handset wasn't ruined. It wasn't cracked or broken. It was still serviceable. But what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to restore this phone. I'm trying to make it look as much as possible like the day it was manufactured, which means everything should be clean, everything should be shiny, and everything should work. And I didn't want to use the old handset. Now, there was some stories online from radio collectors and telephone collectors and different things they do to their bakelite parts. Some of the treatments include like shining with vegetable oil or putting shoe polish on, or there was a particular skin product that a lot of people were referencing that you could rub into your bakelite part, and it would kind of bring back the shine and maybe get rid of some of that brown staining. But I didn't want to do any of that because ultimately I want to be able to actually use this telephone. I don't want to have to worry about putting vegetable oil or shoe polish or whatever on the handset to maintain it. So what I did was I bought another handset. I purchased this from an eBay seller, and his username is Raceman729, RACEMAN 729. So we'll give him a plug here. And this is a Western Electric Model G3 handset. So the G3 handset is not bakelite. The G3 handset is actually plastic. I don't know if it's the same plastic that the shell's made out of. I mean, it's probably something very similar, but this is functionally and physically almost identical to the original handset. The difference here being that I'm going to be able to shine this one up, same way I'm shining up the shell and the other parts. And if you take a look at this, I mean, this is scratched up too. This is, this has been used for a long time, and it's got some kind of residue from some kind of sticker was on here. But otherwise, it's in good shape. It's not broken or damaged in any way. It's in good condition otherwise, and the cord's in good condition. It's not cracked or broken anywhere. It's got all the same connections that the original handset had, right? It's got the same kind of speaker here, and it's got the same kind of mouthpiece. So very, very close. I mean, if we look at some of the dates here, this has a date. It says February 1969 for that piece. The mouthpiece says 57. I don't know if that's the year. I assume that's the year. 57 for the mouthpiece. It's got the same kind of plastic cup that holds the mouthpiece element as the old handset. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to put this, I'm going to shine this piece up, and we're going to put this on the telephone. It's a compromise, I know, but it allows me to use this phone as a phone and not have to worry about getting shoe polish on my hands. So one of the things we want to do today is we want to work on the dial. This is an aluminum dial, and the paint is bubbling and peeling in different places here. Of course, it's really dirty too. It needs a good cleaning. But what we're going to do is we're going to sand this. We're going to sand this old paint. We're going to get rid of these bubbles, and we're going to try painting this with an enamel spray paint. And we're going to see what happens, see how it looks. It's going to be the same treatment on this ring. This is the ring that holds your telephone card. to the dial. And this is the same story. The paint here is kind of peeling and needs to be refinished. So we're going to sand this and spray paint this also. And then the other thing is this piece I haven't tried to restore yet. And as you can see, it's got scratches on it. Scratches very similar to what the shell had originally. And this goes inside the shell. It goes in here. And it's held on with this screw here. And this ends up closing up this void here. So when you would pick the phone up, you'd stick your fingers in here and you'd pick it up. And then, of course, you know, you do this over the course of 20 or 30 or 40 years, you're going to get some scratches. So that's like somebody's fingernails keep hitting there for years and years and years, and this is what you end up with. So I'm going to show you the process of cleaning this. So I'm going to show you the progressive paper grits, which I'm going to wet sand, and I'm going to show you how this can clean up, and these scratches can be eliminated in this piece. Okay, I moved outside for this step. Here's the phone dial, and I have a piece of 400 grit paper. I'm going to start to sand this, what happens. Okay, starting to break some of the bubbles off. Yeah, some kind of paint and other crud coming off when I do this. So we'll just keep at this for a little bit. Of course, you know, when you're painting anything at all, the prep work is so important. Your surface has to be clean. You have to remove anything that's loose, like old paint. So, there's some of the back here too. So the 400 grit paper seems to be taking this off, taking the high spots off, the parts that were bubbled, peeling. You can see that. All right, I have a ways to go with this, but you get the general idea. Okay, so this is what it looks like after about 15 minutes of sanding with the 400 grit paper. And what I've noticed is it almost looked like this may have been repainted at some point, because there seemed to be two distinctive types of paint on here. The top layer was peeling off pretty easy, but there was also this bottom layer that's on there pretty well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean this with some alcohol, get any oil from my fingers off of it, and then I'm going to spray it. I'm going to spray it with a primer first, and then I'm going to hit it with a gloss coat. And just for reference, this is the bottom and this is the top. Okay, so I have this plastic piece from the shell that we looked at earlier, and we looked at it before, and it's pretty scratched up. So I'm going to show you the process really quickly here. I start with a 400 grit paper and I start sanding. This isn't very exciting to watch, but you start sanding, and you sand and you sand and you sand. And you don't be afraid to take some material off, because I mean, that's what you have to do when you have scratches like this. You have to remove material. Well, this process gets a little messy as you start to remove the plastic. Another thing, it's always good to start with a fresh piece of sandpaper if you can. I understand this wet or dry 3M that I bought is relatively expensive, but you do get a better result if you have nice clean paper to start with. Okay, so we've been doing this for a little bit here. Let's I'm gonna dry this off and we'll take a look. Okay, so those scratches are gone. Of course, we've replaced it with smaller scratches, but that's all part of the process. I'm going to do a little more with the 400 right now. A little more with the 400. And of course, this is easier if you have a flat piece to work on. It doesn't have a lot of inside corners. Like this one has these inside corners that are going to be difficult to get into. I found this when I was doing the shell also. There are quite a few places it's difficult to get into and give it a proper sanding. But this is like anything else, the more effort you put in, the better result you're going to get. Try to show you that angle. Okay, we'll dry that again and we'll take a look, see what we have. Okay, that's dry and pretty much same as before. The original scratches are gone, but now we have some other scratches, but the scratches we just put in are smaller. So the way we deal with that is we go to the next higher grit paper, which is 800. So I have an 800 grit paper, and I've just been cutting strips of it and folding it into thirds like this. So you're able to, well, thirds. There we go. That might work better. Folding it into thirds. We wet our paper and start this pass. And of course, this has a different feel to it. This is a little easier to sand because it's a finer grit, and of course we're wetting it too. So when you use wet sanding, when you wet sand like this, it tends to keep the dust down, and it also tends to, I think it makes it a little smoother, a little easier to sand something, because it doesn't allow the paper to clog up with material like it would necessarily if you were dry sanding. That's always been an issue I've found when I'm sanding things without water. Okay, into this other corner now. This isn't terribly exciting to watch, so I'll probably be editing a lot of this out. All right, let's dry that, see what we have. Oh, I mean, that already looks better. I mean, it's still dull, it's still scratched, but of course now my scratches are smaller now. They're 800 grit scratches rather than 400. And there's really no sign of the original scratches that were there. Those are gone. Let's go to the next grit. We're going to go to the 1000 grit. 1000 grit. And fold this in thirds and wet it. And here we go again. A different feel to this even than the 800. I think that the finer you go with the grits, the more effort you have to put in to really smooth it out. More time you have to put in. So the 400 grit really removes a lot of material right away. But as you go finer and finer, I think we're on the 1000 right now. This isn't removing as much material. So you have to do it for a longer period of time. Of course, you could do this with a power sander too, but there is a danger there, of course. You may end up over-sanding it or removing too much material, or melting something even, because this can get, I imagine this could get hot if you were doing this at some thousands of RPM versus what I'm doing here with my fingers. Alright, let's take a look at this now. We'll dry this off and we'll take a look. You can see that's even better, and it feels smooth now too. Feels smooth. Okay, last one we're going to do is the 3000. Grit. I write the grits on these because they are printed on the sheet, but sometimes you'll cut a piece and the part where it says 3000 won't be there. So it's a good idea to just write the number. Because sometimes it's difficult to tell between these, between like the 800 and the 1000, let's say, for example. All right, I'm gonna wet this. And this is a totally different feel from the 1000. I wouldn't say it's smooth, but it's like you don't have as much resistance though. Well, you shouldn't. As you sand it more, the resistance should get less and less. Should reduce. Get this corner. Okay. Now, I didn't put nearly enough time in here, but I am going to dry this and we'll take a look. The 3000 grit pass, I mean, it may take a few passes with 3000 grit to really get it close to being acceptable. But we'll dry this off and we'll take a look. Well, there you go. It's not quite shiny, but it's a little bit shiny. It's very smooth to the touch. And absolutely no traces of those scratches now. Well, I mean here they are. This part, I didn't sand this part to compare. You can see those. But over here, where they were here and here, they're just completely gone now. And very smooth. So, if I were to do another pass with the 3000 and probably do the rubbing compound, I think this would look really, really nice. It would look, you know, ideally it would look as shiny as this side, which this is inside. Of course, no one ever touched this or scratched it, so it would look this shiny, or it should look this shiny when we're done. All right, getting back to the dial. Okay, so off camera, I took the dial, and you'd seen earlier I had sanded it. I hit both sides with a primer, this dull primer, and then I let that dry, and then I hit the top with a gloss black. Now, of course, this isn't really perfect. There's some orange peel there. There's some spots. So, what I'm probably going to have to do is I'll have to let this really, really dry, really cure. And I will probably have to polish it, and I'm thinking maybe just polish it with the rubbing compound that I'm going to use on the plastic parts, and that may smooth this out a little bit. Of course, I don't know, you know, using spray paint that you buy in Home Depot or a department store, it's not the same as the paint that the manufacturer used when they first painted this. It's not the same at all. So the mileage may vary, but the whole goal here is to get this surface smoothed out, which I think I'll be able to do. I think I'll be able to do that. And of course, I'm not going to be using this dial either. I'm not going to be putting my fingers in here and dialing numbers with it. It'll be an answer-only phone when it's on my desk. So if I were going to make any calls with the phone, I'd have to have some kind of a touch tone pad connected. I don't think the pulse dialing from the dial is going to work anymore. All right, here is the retainer ring that holds the phone number card onto the dial, and I can just see here that I'm probably going to have to hit this with some more gloss paint because the edges don't look like they've been covered very well. But same story with this. Okay, so I sanded this off camera with 400 grit. I got most of the paint off. The stuff that was peeling and dirty, I got that off, and I hit it with the primer, and I hit it with the gloss black. I could just see that, though. I'm going to have to take another pass at that because it doesn't look like it got painted. Anyway, I think that's it for part 2 of Western Electric Model 500 desk telephone restoration project. So if you like this video, please, by all means, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, go ahead, give it a thumbs down. You're entitled to your opinion. You know, there's no such thing as bad press. No such thing as bad attention on YouTube. If you look at some of our other videos on our channel and you like what you see, please feel free to subscribe. We're at 107 subscribers right now. This is early August 2019, which is really, really great. I thank you. My thanks to all my subscribers and everyone who watches and everyone who comments and gives me words of encouragement. I really, really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below the video on the YouTube page, or you can email me at network13.contact@gmail.com. It's network13.contact@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to answer your questions or address your concerns. I think at this point this is enough for one day, so I will say, as always, thank you for watching. Oh, just as an addendum here, because I forgot to mention it earlier, please stay tuned for part 3 of the phone restoration project, where we'll be getting into something else. We'll be cleaning the base plate and maybe painting that. Probably painting that because it's rusty. And we'll also be cleaning some of the other parts, and we may be working on the dial mechanism too. So you recall the dial mechanism was in pretty bad shape. It wasn't turning very well. So we're going to disassemble that and clean it and see if we can get it spinning normally again.